Sidney Powell has pleaded guilty in the election interference case in Georgia. You heard that right, ladies and gentlemen. She says she did it. She's guilty. Is charged. She was trying to overthrow the election. I'm exaggerating a little bit. She pleaded down several misdemeanor charges instead of several felony charges, but she has agreed that she will provide communications and testify truthfully, which suggests she has just placed the knife into the back of Donald Trump and will now be testifying against other Trump defendants, which means as one domino falls, so too shall all the others. We'll now see how many people who were charged in the Georgia case will begin to plead guilty. And you can make the argument. They're not saying they did it. They're pleading down to lesser charges. No, they're telling the press, they're telling the public they did it. That's all that matters. No one's going to look at the minutia of the cases. No one's going to investigate what they pleaded guilty to other than they were accused of trying to overthrow the United States government and said, yes, they did it. Amazing, isn't it? Now, I don't know what this means for Trump. I can only assume they're going to file more challenges to his candidacy under the 14th Amendment because he's doing really well in the polls. Currently, the Real Clear Politics average has Donald Trump tied with Joe Biden. So not like he's winning as of right now. It's gone a little bit back and forth. But he does have many very favorable polls. This a year out from the election means relatively little. But of course, the efforts to sabotage and stop Donald Trump how would you say this? Extrajudiciously, I suppose, outside of the extra electorally, outside of the electoral system. Instead of saying, let the American peoples vote, they're saying we will lie, cheat, and steal to stop Donald Trump. Here's a story from Time Magazine. We also have some audio clips to play for you. Sidney Powell pleads guilty in case over efforts to overturn Trump's Georgia loss. Lawyer Sidney Powell pleaded guilty to reduced charges Thursday over efforts to overturn Trump's loss in the 2020 election in Georgia, becoming the second defendant in the sprawling case to reach a deal with prosecutors. Powell, who is charged alongside Trump and 17 others with violating the state's anti-racketeering law, entered the plea just a day before jury selection was set to start in her trial. She pleaded guilty to 6 misdemeanors related to intentionally interfering with the performance of election duties. And now here's what happens next. Donald Trump is going to be facing a similar trial, right? Sidney Powell, now on the record saying, yeah, did it. So what's going to happen? That's all they need. They now go to the jury in the Trump case and say, see, look, Sidney Powell says he did it. And the jury says, okay, case closed. You've got an individual involved in the conspiracy. I'm not exaggerating. Literally, they're charging him under RICO, admitting it all happened. There you go. Powell's large charge alongside Trump. As part of the deal, she will serve 6 years of probation, will be fined $6,000, and will have to write an apology letter to Georgia and its residents. She also agreed to testify truthfully, i.e., she's agreed to lie. How about that? Against her co-defendants at future trials. Powell, 68, was initially charged with racketeering and 6 other counts as part of a wide-ranging scheme to keep the Republican president in power after he lost the 2020 election. Prosecutors say she also participated in an unauthorized breach of election equipment in a rural Georgia county elections office. You gotta love the willingness of people to say every man for themselves. The acceptance of a plea deal is a remarkable about-face for a lawyer who, perhaps more than anyone else, strenuously pushed baseless conspiracy theories about a stolen election in the face of extensive evidence to the contrary. And, I will say this. I think Sidney Powell's claims in 2020 were absolutely bonkers. Crazy stuff. And, it's remarkable to see many people coming around to my line of thinking while claiming I'm coming around to theirs. It was remarkable when people were like, in March, Trump's going to be brought in as the president. And then the conspiracy even extended to Joe Biden was secretly arrested and that, it's going to happen. I can't tell you how many people I spoke to in person who was like, no, I think Trump's really the president. And I'm like, why? What are you talking about? I'll tell you what happened. Ballot harvesting, ballot chasing. They admitted how they did it. Voting in the park in Wisconsin. Was it Wisconsin where they did that? And people were like, no, it's fake ballots and it's all this and it's all that. And I'm like, dude, I'm telling you what they did. Okay. They told you what they did. Procedural manipulation. And Sidney Powell chased after some crazy nonsense. But maybe some people think she was always out to sabotage Trump. And so was L. Lynn Wood. I don't know about all that. That's what they claim. They say that if prosecutors compel her to testify, she could provide insight on a news conference she participated in on behalf of Trump and his campaign shortly after the election, and on a White House meeting she attended in mid-December of that year, during which strategies and theories to influence the outcome of the election were discussed. Powell was scheduled to go on trial on Monday with lawyer Kenneth Chesebrough after each filed a demand for a speedy trial. Jury selection was set to start Friday. The development means that Chesebrough will go on trial by himself, though prosecutors said earlier that they also plan to look into the possibility of offering him a plea deal. So what? Sidney Powell's not going to testify against him? This is it, man. She stabbed everybody in the back. She's not. They're now going to use this to go after everyone else and make it substantially harder. But it's obvious. This is the game they play. Okay, they play with everybody. You got three guys who are accused of a crime. You go to one and say, "Listen, I don't know. I don't care. If you agree to work with us, you go home to your family. If you don't, we'll get them to do it. They'll sell you out and you go to prison. You choose." And what happens? It's a race to the bottom, with everyone trying to sell out everybody else because they don't want to be the one getting locked up. But in the end, y'all get locked up because it was a trick the whole time. They say Barry Coburn, a Washington-based lawyer for Powell, declined to comment. A lower-profile defendant in the case, bail bondsman Scott Graham Hall, last month pleaded guilty to 5 misdemeanor charges. He was sentenced to 5 years of probation and agreed to testify in further proceedings. Prosecutors allege that Powell conspired with Hall and others to access election equipment without authorization and hired computer forensics firm Sullivan Strickler to send a team to Coffee County in South Georgia to copy software and data from voting machines and computers there. The indictment says a person who is not named sent an email to a top Sullivan Strickler executive and instructed him to send all data copied from Dominion Voting Systems equipment in Coffee County to an unidentified lawyer associated with Powell and the Trump campaign. Well, I got to tell you, this is their fault for believing the crackpot nonsense conspiracies and chasing after it. But what is Donald Trump guilty of? Donald Trump was challenging an election, as is, in my opinion, his constitutional requirement. That's right. If you believe impropriety occurred, it is your duty as an American to challenge it and seek out answers. And the Trump campaign, Trump wanted that. But he had some really bad people working for him, unfortunately. Really bad people who are not very smart. And this is where he ends up. Ed Krasenstein says Sidney Powell's guilty plea in Fannie Willis's Georgia case not only spells bad news for Trump, but it also means that we will likely see more guilty pleas from Trump co-defendants. This is why Powell has agreed to truthfully testify against other co-defendants, which will very likely include Trump. This means other co-defendants know that if they don't take a plea deal, she will likely be testifying against them. This is horrible for Trump's defense. We could see multiple co-defendants flip on him. You bet. That's always the plan. You put the boot in the neck and say, you work with us now or you get locked up. And this is a point about who these people are. Trump should never have brought these people in or around himself. And that's his fault. She's now going to turn on Trump because she wants to protect herself. There's no loyalty here. Here's the clip.
That you truthfully testify at all hearings and proceedings and trials involving the co-defendants in this matter, and that you have no communication with co-defendants, media, or witnesses until this case has been completely closed against all defendants.
I do.
And do you understand, as a special condition of this sentence, that you are to provide, what you've already done, a recorded proffer to the state, and provide any documents and evidence subject to any lawful privileges asserted in a good faith prior to entering this plea?
I do.
And Judge, at this time, the state will enter into evidence what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1, which is the apology letter that Ms. Powell has already.
I think about Sparta. I think about great nations. I think about Patrick Henry, not Mick Henry. I don't know what's going on with that Jim Jordan stuff. No, give me liberty or give me death. I think about the people who are willing to stand by and support those they believed in. And I think about the lack of candor and character that we have now. The lies, the manipulations, the lust for power, disloyalty. It's the weirdest thing to me. It's the weirdest thing to me. I just don't understand the minds that these people have. I really, really don't. They don't want to go to jail. I get it. I get not wanting to go to jail. But their personal comfort is more important to them than the concentration of being within themselves. I don't understand that. But perhaps because it was never there, right? See, for me, There is what I am, and then there are the externalities. And asking me to plead guilty to something I did not do would be for me to compromise the essence of being of myself. For what? Now, don't get me wrong. I can certainly understand in some circumstances you retreat. Surrender and retreat are not always the wrong response. I don't see how Sidney Powell's view of the world, intentions or goals benefit from her taking this plea agreement. Now, I understand. You can make the argument, oh, but now she's going to be able to fight the good fight. No, she's not. Probation for 6 years, she's going to go hide away and, sip mimosas or whatever and mind her own business and say the comfort of my life is more important. I despise this. I find it to be disgusting and pathetic. Slovenly, lazy, morbidly obese individuals of liberal sensibilities who would rather sit in their hover chair, floating around drinking Slurpees, gaining weight, because it's so easy and comfortable. It's weird. I just don't understand this. I really don't. But I mean, people probably do. I'm just saying I don't. I don't, because I get that it exists. I understand the motivations. But I was talking with, I can't remember who I was talking with. Luke Rudkowski put out a video hanging out with Ian Crossland. They're in Miami. Ian's at the gym and he's working out. Right? Good for him. And I think it's funny because, Ian's been talking about how working out feels so good. And I'm like, yes, it does. It feels amazing. I'm going to go exercise after I wrap up the morning show. I tend to. And there are a lot of people who sit around and don't want to go to the gym, don't want to exercise, and I just don't understand that. It feels great. But you know what it is? It's that people are averse to any kind of strain or hardship. And that to me, I don't understand. I think the personal struggle and is the essence of life, right? There are a lot of people that say things like, my children will never understand the things that I went through. And I'm just like, why? Like, did it make you successful? Did struggling and overcoming challenges make you smarter and stronger and better, sharper? It did. That's the grindstone, the blade up against the stone, the whetstone, sharpening it. That is a hard stone. You are pressing it against, applying pressure and force to sharpen that blade. And if you leave the blade sitting there doing nothing, it erodes. That's why I have to oil my meteorite katanas, swords. You have to maintain. And there are so many people that just want to sit about and just consume, but it feels bad. I don't understand this. Would it not feel more mentally and emotionally satisfying standing up for what you believe in, defying corruption and evil, staring down the beast and saying, I will not move? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the reality is Sidney Powell was always a liar and never believed any of this stuff and thought it was a path to get rich. And that is perhaps reality. The reason why she's pleading guilty now, she was only doing this because she saw it as a path towards cash, grifting. Maybe that's the real answer. Because I kind of feel like any true believer, anyone who truly believed in what they said and had faith would refuse to back down. I ask you this. Imagine you, good God-fearing Christians, were put on trial and told you will spend the rest of your life behind bars because you are a blasphemer who believes in Christ. And they said to you, just tell the court, write a letter saying you do not believe in Christ, you do not follow this doctrine, and we'll let you live under our boot, but outside of prison. Just apologize and swear to the court you don't really believe any of this. How many Christians would truly do that? I'm sure there are some. You probably wouldn't call them Christians. But I know there's not everybody watching this is Christian. My point is, even those who are not Christian recognize a true believer in the faith is not going to plead to a court they don't actually believe it. They're going to say no. And some may say, sure, whatever you want, just please don't hurt me. But can you really call them a true believer if they believe that they would compromise their immortal soul. Now, I'm not saying I hold like a religious view of this or anything. I'm just saying that if someone came to me and told me to reject and renounce everything that makes up the core of my being for a little comfort, I'd say the core of my being is marked by a willingness to sacrifice for what I believe in. So I will gladly sit in your box until the day I die, knowing that it is what must be done for what I believe to be true. Man, it's crazy to me. I just can't understand that. The willingness to sit in your comfort, but knowing you have betrayed everything that is within you doesn't make sense to me. I just don't understand it. That mental prison would be a misery well beyond being jailed by a corrupt system. And you hope that when you stand up for what you truly believe in and say, no, I will not move, when they do lock you up for what you truly believe, one day the righteous will prevail and you will be released and you will be vindicated. For many of you, maybe it's not about Christ or religion. Maybe it is the ideals of America. So I ask you this. Marxists take over this country and accuse you of the crime of sedition for supporting the racist founding fathers. And they tell you to speak to the court the true words of your apology and remorse. Tell the people of this nation, wear the dunce cap, and say you reject the founding fathers, the Constitution, our inalienable rights. Those are lies from racist slave owners. Admit it, and we'll let you live. How many of you would stand before this nation and speak up and say that Thomas Jefferson was an unrepentant racist with horrible ideas who should never be idolized or canonized, and you reject those teachings and apologize for having ever thought those thoughts? How many of you would be willing to do that? I would not. And this is why I say this should prove Sidney Powell is a grifter. Because either she never believed what she was actually claiming, or today, her selling out these views proves she never cared in the first place. I mean, this is it right now. Or she's turned her back on what she believes. Doesn't sound like very strong convictions, if you ask me. No, I think she's probably a grifter who was just trying to get press and get attention and enrich herself. Because you come to me and you tell me something like something we know to be true, right? Even outside of our faith in the founding ideals of this nation or in your religion. Let's say they came out and said, tell the court that Joe Biden did not say, fire the prosecutor, not giving the $1 billion. But he did say that. No, we don't care. You must write a letter saying it never happened. You want me to lie? I tell you this. There are 4 lights. Do you guys know that reference? This is why I love. I mean, the 90s were really great, man. I'm sorry. It's just true. The 2000s sucked. I'm sorry. You know, I was driving in the car and I put on 90s top songs and it's like, we know all the hits and we're like, oh man, Jesus Jones. Remember that one? And then I put on 2000 hits and we're sitting there like, what is this? Like, what are these songs? Like, nobody knows the words. Nobody remembers it. What happened? The internet, maybe, I guess. Napster. I don't know. But the 90s were great, man. Star Trek: The Next Generation. Captain Jean-Luc Picard. I know it's fiction, but these stories are important. They're very important. He's captured. He's captured by the Cardassians, not the Kardashians, okay? An alien race nearing war with the Federation. He is captured and tortured mercilessly. And the military officer keeps shocking him, saying, how many lights do you see? And he says, 4. And there are 4 lights. And he says, you're mistaken. There are 5 lights. Now, how many lights do you see? And Picard says, 4. Shock. Once again, how many lights do you see? And he could not break Captain Jean-Luc Picard. It's amazing. This is indoctrination. I am a small child. I am watching this sitting on the couch with my dad, and I barely understand what I'm watching. As I get older, I just start to rewatch some of the old episodes, truly with a more nuanced understanding and wiser. Viral clips, one of Data asking, Why is it that we reject terrorism but find that throughout history it tends to actually be successful? It's a scary thought. And Picard says it may be, but I do not subscribe to the thought that political power is derived from the barrel of a gun, but from a will from the masses. That last part's not part of the quote, but that's the general idea. These are the things I grew up with learning and believe in. And it could just be that were I not ever exposed to these ideas, I would not hold these ideas. And that's kind of a sad thought. I've been thinking about the movie The Patriot, right? It's my favorite film. Modern favorite film. I love Doctor Strange, but in terms of like ideals and values and nuance, man, The Patriot is incredible. Year 2000, I think it's 2001, Mel Gibson, American Revolution. It's fiction, right? They fictional characters in the Revolution fighting a battle that's, you know, ancillary to the actual end of the Revolution, but amazing film. The concepts of guerrilla warfare, propaganda, manipulation, the true cost of war. It's the importance of indoctrinating young people towards American values. That's why I say this. As soon as your kids are old enough, because there's like people getting shot in it and cannon fire and it's brutal. As soon as your kids are old enough, I'd say you have them watch that film so they can understand what it means to fight for what you believe in and the sacrifices that will be made. Because it's scary to watch. But I think one of the problems we have as a nation is that since probably World War II, we have seen a degradation in the moral convictions of the American citizenry. A willingness to stand up for what we knew to be right, gone today. And now you have people who are going to sell you out the moment they get the opportunity. Jenna Ellis is trending. I don't know why. Just popped up, right? She's also facing criminal charges and she did nothing wrong. She's a lawyer providing legal advice. She going to plead guilty too? I don't know. But considering Sidney Powell did, the dominoes begin to fall. It will now become increasingly harder for anyone, the innocent, to prove their innocence when someone is willing to lie on the stand to get you convicted because they don't want to go to jail. I just don't understand it. I got to be completely honest. I don't know. The idea that you would push someone off a cliff to save yourself is a crazy thought to me. It's crazy. But I guess people justify survival. Man, I don't know. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.